Today we're talking about the history of the Annex neighborhood.
The Annex neighborhood in Toronto is roughly located south of DuPont, west of Avenue, south to Bloor, and west, just past Bathurst Street. The area was first settled in the late 1700s and wasn't officially part of the city of Toronto until 1887.
The area was viewed by many as the outer limits of the city for a long time. As the city grew, so did what Bloor represented.
Here is a photo of the Midtown Theatre, now the hot dog cinema in the 1940s, named Midtown because it was viewed as such. The neighborhood was developed starting in the 1880s, with Grand Victorian and Edwardian designed homes, architecturally specific to the area, often known as Annex-styled houses. The size and posh veneer of the houses represented many of its original inhabitants. Timothy Eaton and his family, George Gooderham Sr. of the Distillery District notoriety, the Massey family, and others. The 1950s and 60s along the stretch near Spadina brought a brief period of modern development at the cost of older homes. With those decades also came the newly arrived Hungarian community following the Hungarian Revolution. Some shops still representing the community to this day. The Korean community just west of Bathurst experiencing a similar fate. The neighborhood also played a large role within the Black community, being the destination for some from the Underground Railroad, as well as the location of the publishing of Contrast magazine during the 1970s, 80s, and early 90s. The 2016 census has the Annex with under 17,000 residents. The area has over 500 buildings that are protected by Heritage Toronto, making it one of the most insulated neighborhoods from development, besides, of course, Honest Ed's. Margaret Atwood, Adrienne Clarkson, Rachel McAdams, and many other prominent Canadians reside there these days. And until recently at the local dog parks, you could also see Meghan Markle, Guy, Bogart, and sometimes Harry, Meghan, living just west of Bathurst. A history of the Annex wouldn't be complete without a discussion of the proposed Spadina Expressway of the 1960s. The proposed highway would have split the neighborhood in half, a concept so dark that it solidified activist groups and resulted in the cancellation of the project. One of the most convincing voices behind the dissent was that of Annex resident Jane Jacobs, who lived at 69 Albany Avenue for 37 years until her death in 2006.
The Annex has always heavily revolved around Bloor Street. Bloor Street, of course, named after this guy.
The street has always had a connection to U of T. The iconic Brunswick House stood there in some form since 1876 and recently became a drugstore. Lee's Palace and Dance Cave opened in their current format in 1985, but originally opened as Allen's Bloor Theatre around 1919. Everyone from Nirvana to Chili Peppers to Oasis have played there. And Dance Cave above still looks a lot like it did when it was used in Tom Cruise's 1988 film, Cocktail. Toronto's iconic Honest Ed's opened on Bloor, just west of Bathurst in 1948 by Ed Mirvish. Through the years, it would captivate the city, alter the world of marketing, play a large role within the new immigrant population, and of course, shut down Bloor and Bathurst so Mr. T could sign some autographs.
What you doing, sucker? This road leads directly to the airport, Hannibal.
Sadly, the structure is now gone. Not all has been pleasant and nice within the neighborhood, though. 9-year-old Sharon Morningstar Keenan was murdered on Brunswick in a very publicized 1983 killing. Bert Massey of the Massey family was famously killed by an 18-year-old servant in 1915. And a really secretive spiritual cult calling themselves the Therafields took over 20 houses in the neighborhood with hundreds of members in the 1970s and 80s, in what would lead to substantial fear and conflict within the neighborhood. The Therafields, led by self-proclaimed guru Leah Hindley Smith, who would later escape to the US, would alternate between their Annex commune and a farm in Caledon, where they would put on mass therapy sessions. The group would self-combust in the mid-1980s in a series of peculiar events and sketchy dealings. The Annex has been home to everyone from Mr. Eaton to undergrads to refugees to movie stars.
With property prices skyrocketing and gentrification in full throttle, we can all rest assured about one thing. Dance Cave will never be posh or gentrified.